Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody. Bill, it has been obviously a crazy week since we last spoken. Charlie Kirk was assassinated. This video's been all over the place. For a while, the shooter was on the lam. There were questions about the motives. Was he a groyper? Was he himself trans? We've gotten a little bit of clarity on that, but I think really what I want to talk to you about today, as I think the story has progressed, Bill, is about the lionization of Charlie Kirk, which happened very rapidly, and now this subsequent pushback via maybe what I might call cancel culture. But let's start there. Did you notice, Bill, or were you surprised by the real that Kirk was very much turned into a martyr very quickly?
I'm not. Let me just say at the outset, the murder was horrific. No one deserves to be murdered for their political views, no matter how distasteful I might find those views. So I just want to get that clear.
That's confusing, Bill, because you've said so many things over the years calling for armed revolution and bloodshed.
I'm
glad you got that out, and
yeah.
I support your call for peace and harmony.
I'm not surprised that conservatives are looking to martyr him. That seems not shocking at all, and I totally understand why they would be motivated to do that. I am surprised to see some other voices really softening the edges around what Charlie Kirk stood for. People who are more, he has a recline column. I think there was a college president. I want to say Barnard. I think it was Barnard that had a column, and I don't think it really. I think the Barnard president was trying to argue that we need to have more civility in our discourse and whatnot, which is true. But I don't think Charlie Kirk was a model of civil discourse.
Well, he was in the sense that he went to campuses and debated students. If that's your criteria,
yeah, that's a very low bar. I existed and I engaged in political discussion. Like, that doesn't automatically make everything that comes out of your mouth civil and reasonable and respectful.
I think that's the argument, though, don't you?
That's a very poor argument. So I don't think that's in trying to improve our discourse. I don't think it to kind of reverse engineer the argument and associate it to somebody who didn't do the civil things. I don't think really serves the cause. It's only going to make those who have paid attention to what Charlie Kirk said over the years and realize, hey, you're really sanitizing what went on there. I'm not going to buy argument that I need to. If civility is you doing that, then I'm not going to be civil. So it doesn't serve the cause of more civility. So that, I think, is that surprise I think is not productive.
Well, look, okay. I mean, so obviously there's a lot of factors here. One, we saw a video of him brutally being murdered. Everyone in America pretty much has seen this video. He was a young father and husband, and we've seen images of him with his wife and his children, which obviously is anyone who's a father and a husband, has kids, a wife, all that, we can empathize and sympathize with what they're going through, right? So I think there's that human element. He had a sort of joie de vivre about him. He kind of loved what he did. And I think he had a likable, charming side. He certainly was courageous and willing to go into, quote unquote, the lion's den and debate and discuss topics and to all comers, So those are some of the good things. Now, I do think that, there were several things that he said, including about things like affirmative action, that I think are very hard to defend if you are anybody, a conservative or anybody. And so when those things, when those quotes and clips resurface, I don't, that maybe is the inconvenient part, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
when you're
it's a
saying I don't feel
complicated
comfortable on a
story.
plane when there's a black pilot, there's no civility in that. There's nothing to honor or model there. It's not cause to murder him. Uh, but you're definitely getting into sanitizing territory when if you're going to just forget that
Mhm.
part, which is a
Yeah,
pretty big part of the kind of politics he waged.
yeah. I think some of it too. Some of these comments, though, were. I think there's a way to express that point that is more ironic than the way he did it. One could say that there are a ton of highly qualified minorities doing very important things, but the part of the danger of affirmative action is it makes people wonder if the people in these positions are actually qualified. Like that may or may not be politically correct, but I think it's more palatable than maybe the way he expressed it.
Right, and
And Bill, something else he said was, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, and I've learned recently that apparently you can get canceled for paraphrasing. So let me just stress, this is not a direct quote. But he did say something to the effect of, we're going to have to tolerate some people dying in shootings because
school
it's,
shootings.
yeah, because it's a trade-off, and to protect the Second Amendment, we're just going to have to learn to deal with that. That obviously didn't age well either.
I mean, that is kind of a sort of a shocking argument. That's not it's not much of a culture of life type of argument to make, but it's a little bit different than saying something to suggest that black people can't fly planes. Other things that he said about transgender people.
Kanji, he was talking about the Supreme Court justices. He's talking
Yeah.
about other. I forget. I think there were 3 or 4 prominent African American women, and this is actually the quote that I didn't know. I did a quick solo video last week where I talked about this, and I should have included that one. But that was probably the most offensive. I wish I had it in front of me. Maybe I'll put the video in. But yeah, not great.
So I mean, this is why I don't think it's just say he went to college campuses and debated. That's the right way to do politics. How he debated. I mean, you made an example of making it a critique of affirmative action that didn't suggest that an entire race of people inherently lack qualifications. He would phrase things in a way, maybe if you pushed him on it, he would then maybe scurry back and try to then say it in a more palatable way. But he would lead with the most offensive possible characterization to build up, social media following and be controversial and perhaps play to a center-right conservative and a groyper at the same time. These are
Well,
not
he was attacked by Nick Fuentes, who's a white nationalist,
right.
neo-Nazi. I don't know what the term of art would be to describe him, but the Groypers would go to Turning Point events and cause trouble, and you know, there's a sense that maybe Kirk got pushed to the right by virtue of the existence of people like Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens. That maybe I think in a different era, Charlie Kirk is like a George W. Bush, Sean Hannity wannabe.
Well,
But
that's kind of how he started.
yeah,
As more free market oriented and less culture war when he first began his college college campus based organization. But he towards his later career, he went full blown culture war in a very turbocharged and offensive way that did not to a point where I was really shocked that my kids knew who he was because they're not super political people. but they're on TikTok and whatnot, and like they saw those videos. Lots of kids see those videos. Those debate videos, they
Yeah.
get traction.
Well, and there was even a South Park episode
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 weeks ago
Yeah.
where Eric Cartman parodied Charlie Kirk doing those debates, and I think that's been pulled down now probably forever. It's
Well, they
maybe
didn't rerun it. It was slated to rerun. They didn't rerun it. I don't think it's going to be lost forever because I think even Charlie Kirk took that episode in good humor.
Yeah. Well, I hope not. But dude, this actually happens though. I mean, there are at least 2 episodes of 30 Rock that have disappeared
because of the use of blackface.
There is a Seinfeld episode, at least one, the Puerto Rican Day Parade, that I don't think you can find, maybe somewhere, but not on any streaming services. So these shows do. There is I don't even know what the word would be there, but a purge of content.
Right. Before you get into the cancel culture stuff, what my point I was trying to make is that I think Charlie Kirk defined discourse for the younger generation in a way that's not good, in a way that's not a model to replicate. And so, I mean, if you like what he does, then fine. I'm not telling you how you have to dislike it. If you're a conservative, you like Charlie Kirk, you want to laud him, like go for it. I think other people who probably don't really like that kind of politicking felt kind of compelled to bend over backwards and laud him, sort of like in a let's try to take this horrible moment and turn it into something good. But in doing so, you're really just detached from what actually was occurring.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, Democrats, the left, liberals, I don't know, however you want to put it, are just so on defense now. And so, I think rightly, afraid. And then when someone goes out and murders a prominent conservative voice, I think they're going to just fall all over themselves to like, hey, that's not how we are. We're not, you know what I mean? Like they're so on their heels now.
It really shouldn't be hard to say like murder is bad. But Charlie Kirk said offensive things. Like the two things, you don't just acknowledging Charlie Kirk said offensive things doesn't mean you support murder. I mean, it shouldn't be complicated. But I agree with you. I think that's the reaction some people had. But look, I mean, and I'm not, I don't know if I can draw a straight line between these two things, but cancel culture is now at presidential levels.
Yes.
Where I can't tell you how many times we talked for years about comedians being canceled by leftists and people like Elon Musk saying, free speech is under attack. These boards on Twitter who are saying people can't tell edgy jokes in comedy clubs anymore, and they're complaining their cameras to try to ruin their careers. And you literally have the president of the United States applauding people being kicked off the air, essentially at the threat of his FCC appointments. I have never seen free speech as under threat in this country since Eugene Debs was put in prison. I mean, this is 5-alarm fire stuff. And anyone who claimed to be a free speech absolutist when Barack Obama was president or Joe Biden was president, if you're not doing it now, you're a hypocritical joke.
Yeah. As you and I have noted over the years, it's not censorship if a company does it. It's censorship when the government does it. And so let me just read.
But this is happening after direct threats by government officials.
You're making my point that what the left did, by and large, there were maybe some exceptions, but in general, what the left did was the work of hall monitors. Okay, but let me read to you a little bit from my LA Times column. I won't read from the column, but I'm looking at it right now. Okay, so J.D. Vance, the vice president of the United States, recently told Kirk's radio audience, quote, "When you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out, and hell, call their employer." Pete Hegseth, defense secretary, is reportedly telling staff to track down soldiers guilty of wrong speak. It's my interpretation. Representative Nancy Mace is trying to get teachers terminated, tweeting, quote, "We don't fund hate, we fire it." Attorney General Pam Bondi has warned that the government can, quote, prosecute any professional printer who refuses to, quote, print posters with Charlie's pictures on them for a vigil. She also pledged to, quote, absolutely target, unquote, anyone who targets anyone with, quote, hate speech. I could go on. But Bill, your point, I think, is well said, right? This isn't just an online mob of people, pressuring companies to fire people. This is a much more polished and professional and top-down use of cancel culture than, by and large, what the left did. Maybe with the exception of what the Biden administration did when they kind of leaned on social media outlets to suppress talk about COVID-19 being a lab leak or whatever. But in terms of,
I'm not saying you're doing this.
That's
but
not really cancel culture, but it is suppressed.
Right,
I guess there were people who were deplatformed, right?
There's genuine debate to be had about how you can have effective public health communications within, First Amendment free speech parameters. I think it's a tricky discussion. I understand people coming on different sides of it, but like a government official trying to make sure people don't die of a communicable disease is completely different than a president of the United States saying, take this guy off the air. He said something I disagree with about politics, or he made fun of me personally.
Yeah. And some of it, I should say, some of the pushback or cancel culture is a result of people celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. I think that's horrific. I condemn it. And there were people who put up videos of themselves celebrating, right? But some of the people who've been canceled or fired were guilty of saying what you and I have said on this episode already, which is kind of a nuanced thing. Like, maybe he certainly doesn't deserve to be murdered, but like not everything he did was awesome either. And so you had people like Matthew Dowd, former, I think, Bush advisor on MSNBC, fired by, MS Now, MSNBC, for comments that he said that, frankly, I don't think are that different than what we have said here today, but I could probably be proven wrong. There was a Washington Post columnist who was fired. She did make a mistake, which was putting quotes around something that was a summarization of Kirk's sentiment that I think was a fair and accurate depiction of...
I was looking for the quote she had was not a direct Kirk quote.
Didn't she put... No, it wasn't. No. She was paraphrasing. Here's the mistake, but I could be wrong. But my understanding is her mistake, and it's a serious one in journalism, is that she put quotes around a summarization or a paraphrase of what Kirk actually said.
I didn't realize that. I thought, I read her. This is a Karen Ataya. Am I pronouncing her last name right?
I don't know.
She was the global opinions editor at the Washington Post for a long time. And the takeaway I got from her Substack essay and the comments that she quoted from her superiors who fired her, that she had made a comment about sort of this is how white America wants it with gun violence and gun laws. I got the impression that the white America language was what they used as their pretext. Their communication wasn't super clear, but that's kind of that was the inference that I got, which again, I don't think is a fireable offense. I'm
looking at a Washington Examiner headline here. Washington Post columnist fired. It's pulling up. What is up with my internet? Washington Post columnist fired after posting fake Charlie Kirk quote. On Monday, columnist Karen Ataya, I don't know how to pronounce it, revealed that she had been fired by the Washington Post the week before in a Substack post. She claimed she was fired for having, quote, spoke out against hatred and violence in America, unquote. However, she then admitted that the exact reason for her firing was her social media post on Blue Sky, including a bigoted fake quote attributed to Kirk just hours after the assassination. And the quote is, Black women do not have the brain power to be taken seriously. You do not have to steal a white person's slot. That is a summarization or a paraphrase of what Kirk actually said. But you should not put quotes around it if it is not a direct quote. So I'm not. Maybe there's more to it than just that. But this is what the Washington Examiner reported, and I believe I saw it other places.
The writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, "Black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously." But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
It's interesting just because just in her essay, which I'm just looking at right now, I don't believe she has changed in any way. She shares that post and hold on, I just lost it on my screen.
So apparently, though, it wasn't her column. It was the Blue Sky post.
She said, my only direct reference to Kirk was one post, his own words on record, and then she shares that post.
Yeah.
So if that is inaccurate,
those are not his. But those are not his words.
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of like if I said Edmund Burke said, all that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke never actually said those words, but he said effectively the same thing, just not as eloquently or as pithy as that.
So I'm looking at this is saying this is an altered quote. So I mean, if that is the case, I mean, even still, like that to me is not a fireable offense. That is, the editor says, "Hey, you got this wrong. You should post a correction." Like, you don't have to jump the gun and say, you made a mistake. You were fired immediately. I mean, all journalists make mistakes like that.
I agree. I don't think that's a fireable offense.
Yeah. I mean,
but
if it's wrong, she should fix it.
Obviously, the long knives are out. And we saw the most recent example is Jimmy Kimmel. Now, this comes in the heels of Stephen Colbert's show being canceled or not renewed. Jimmy Kimmel has been suspended indefinitely, I think is the verbiage. I'm not exactly sure. I watched there's a couple of arguments for why he was suspended. One argument is that he made a joke on Monday night where he suggested the motives of the shooter were that he was actually MAGA, which I don't think is true. It could have been, but doesn't turn out to be true. But the other argument is that he showed a clip of Donald Trump. There's a clip of Donald Trump where they ask him about Charlie Kirk dying, and he immediately starts talking about the new ballroom he's having constructed in the White House. So some people are saying that that's actually the reason. But whatever the case, I mean, Donald Trump, it seems that he has now effectively taken down, I don't know how many prominent late night comics there are, 4 or 5. 2 of them now are gone. And Trump and the Trump administration just continue to roll over as the media companies roll over. And it's probably because they want mergers approved, I think. Disney or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the Colbert thing before, I recall. And it may be that these TV executives see these old school late night TV shows as money losers and are looking for reasons to get rid of them. But if you do, and they might say, well, I know it's sort of bad optics. It's bad optics for CBS to do it now because we have this merger application. It's bad optics to do this, when the FCC is threatening Jimmy Kimmel. but here's our chance to unload these contracts. You're still doing something that is adding fuel to a very, very serious fire. You are normalizing and legitimizing government officials, pressuring artists to bite their tongue and not say things critical of those in power, in a way that perhaps is not legally actionable, but is clearly intended to violate the spirit of the First Amendment and chill speech in America. I mean, this is you're talking real fundamental tenets of what America is supposed to be about here. And if I was a TV executive, I would be saying, this is going to be highly damaging to my self-interest in the long run if I can't be comfortable producing content that I think is going to be profitable to me. And just as a matter of being a good citizen of America, you are undermining what America is supposed to be about.
And if I could just point out the irony here, right, which is an obvious subtext, is that conservatives, Republicans have long been against so-called cancel culture. This was a real defining issue. I mean, I could tell you some personal stories, but I won't bore the audience with them. But I'll just say it's pretty clear to me that in 2024, the cancel culture issue was what galvanized stand-up comedians, like people like Joe Rogan and Theo Von, podcasters, tech bros like Elon Musk. I mean, this was the issue, the reason that they threw in with the right, that they voted and sided with Trump and endorsed him in many cases in 2024.
Are they
was
saying
because
anything
there was
now?
a
Do you
sense.
know?
Pardon?
Do you know if they're saying anything now?
I would no, largely no, generally no. There has been some pushback from people like Tucker Carlson when Pam Bondi used the word hate crime, because that is also verboten on the right. We do not believe in hate crimes. There are crimes. And it doesn't matter the motive. It's, you're dead or you're dead anyway. It doesn't matter if they
picking
hate
on
you.
Pam Bondi and nobody else. It sounds like either they're sexist and are treating women to a different standard than men, or just, hey, Pam, don't say the quiet part out loud here. Don't use their language. You could still be fascist. Just don't use their language.
Yeah, no, there's certain people you're allowed to beat up on. And then when Trump says the same thing, it's crickets. That's basically where we're at, Bill. Now, look, I do think that there is a chance that that this kind of thing eventually results in some attrition, where the kinds of people who they just wanted to be able to say the R word and be profane and let their freak flag fly, where this is a turnoff to them. But look, it turns out, and I don't think it was predestined to be this way, but it turns out that a whole bunch of things, like ideas like the rule of law, or following the Constitution, or family values, or you can get on the list, that those were all just kind of convenient. And actually, when you're the one in power, then all bets are off. You can use free speech. Doesn't really matter when you're in power. Cancel culture is actually a good thing when you're in power. I've always hated that view. I like to think that politics is about lifting people up, coming up with ideas, values to make things better. But there is a much more cynical view that politics is about who gets what, or who does what to whom, those kind of things. That's certainly the Trump doctrine as it pertains to weaponizing things like cancel culture.
You get no disagreement from me. I have to write a column today. I might write about this, actually. So I do need to get going on that. But is there anything else you want to talk about quick before we wrap it up?
Yeah, let's real quick touch on a couple things. We can keep it super tight. Kamala Harris, I guess, has a book coming out. Details keep trickling out. The latest thing is that she apparently wanted to pick Pete Buttigieg as her Veep but felt that that'd be too much change, a black woman and a gay dude on the same ticket. So there's a theme here, which is that she played it safe and she did what she thought she should do rather than what would be kind of revolutionary and exciting. And what do you make of that?
I mean, I think it was a reasonable calculation to make, and if you're going to take the view that every tough call Kamala made, I hereby will decree was wrong because she lost. Like that to me is not very sophisticated political analysis. I don't think we can argue that if only she had Pete Buttigieg, when there's no history almost anywhere of a vice president really being a determining factor in who gets elected president of the United States. You're really, overthinking every
but
little
I
thing.
think it's part of the larger theme, which goes into some of the other news that's trickled out, including, basically being that she should have separated more from Biden and she should have been more
Tim
daring.
Walz hardly being. I mean, Buttigieg was in the cabinet. I mean, Walz was a bigger separation from Biden than Buttigieg would have been.
No, but I mean more daring as opposed to kind of playing a prevent. You don't play a prevent defense when you're losing. I mean, they don't tend to work even when you're winning. So look, I actually think that she ran a great campaign for a long time, and then at the end, ran the prevent defense. But it seems like she got away. It seemed to be working for a while, and then just it really flopped at the end. That's my kind of anecdotal sense of it.
Part of it, I mean, is in my mind, she really hit a high mark with the debate, and then Trump made the right decision to not debate her again. And I think she had a harder time in other platforms to show her best self. But even with that, I still think you had this major problem with just the inflation hangover that people were mad about, that Trump was able to communicate that he was going to do something about it. And Kamala, even though she had the actual policy plan to do something about it, had the lack of credibility because she was with the administration that they were blaming for it. But that to me is the bigger thing. I had a piece last week about the first excerpt that came out, which focused on how she felt she was treated and used in the Biden administration, which was much more of interpreted as here's Kamala making the break now from Biden. And I wrote that it really it was a key piece of the puzzle to me about their relationship that I thought fit. I mean, you could still argue that perhaps she is putting things in a self-serving light, and maybe there's another part of the story that she's not saying. So I'm not saying this has to be treated as like the definitive narrative of the relationship, but it always was strange to me that the first big assignment she got in March of 2021 involved immigration, which was a very thorny and complicated political football. It didn't strike me as the thing that was setting up your number two to become number one. And I wasn't approaching it from such a cynical place to say like they're trying to throw her under the bus here or something. And maybe that even is saying it too extreme a way. But I don't think that decision is made if Joe Biden is thinking on day one of his presidency, what can I do so Kamala Harris is elected in 2024? I presumed, and I tweeted it at the time in the interim period before Biden was sworn in. I said something like, what are the odds on how many times Kamala Harris is going to be on a swing state factory floor? That to me was the logical thing to do. So we know that Kamala Harris had a good amount of love from the progressive base, but people were unsure if she could connect with white working class voters in the Rust Belt or the Southwest or Florida or what have you. Take as much time as possible to put her in those environments and show that, you know what, I'm just like Joe Biden. I've learned from the master. I know how to talk to the hard hats. I know the issues that they care about. I'm hearing their feedback. spend as much days as possible before you make the announcement that you're in that wheelhouse. Don't give her immigration, which is an issue that is almost impossible to solve to a swing voter satisfaction. And so again, I don't know if the Biden were like, here's a fun thing to do. Let's screw Kamala Harris with immigration. I don't know if it was that mean, but it just didn't come from a place of here's our plan to nominate Kamala Harris in 2024. And I think so a lot of this, I think, follows from that disconnect between what Kamala Harris was expecting and what Joe Biden was expecting.
All right. Well, I'm sure next week we'll probably be talking about a looming government shutdown, so stay tuned for that. But probably call it quits here. Bill, any final thoughts or anything you want to plug?
I got nothing to plug. Unless you want to read that piece of mine at the monthly. I did a shutdown piece earlier than that because I think that Chuck Schumer's going about this all wrong. And, I'm not a big knee-jerk hate on Democratic leadership kind of guy, but I think they should be just walking away from the table and saying, hey, Republicans, good luck. Not that you want to shut down, but like, hey, you don't want us? You go figure it out. Good, best luck to you. And so they're still doing this kind of making demands game, which I think is probably going to end in them caving and not getting what they want and be a little more unsatisfying. But we got several days for this to play out.
All right, check out my column at the LA Times, which is syndicated, which means I'm also running it on my Substack. You can read it there as well. It's about cancel culture and the right. Bill Scher.
Hi, Lewis.
All right, we'll see you back here in the DMZ next week.
Thanks. Take care.